The morning Marcus Reeves stood in the penthouse and told his 6 months pregnant wife to get rid of that mistake or raise it alone, then threw her belongings into the hallway to make room for his mistress. He had absolutely no idea that Rebecca Sinclair Reeves, the woman he was divorcing and kicking out while she carried his daughter, was the secret billionaire who owned Apex Global Industries, the $47 billion company where he'd just been promoted to senior vice president. He didn't know that the pregnant wife he called a boring, useless parasite with no career secretly sat on the board that approved his $850,000 salary. He had no clue that the woman he was discarding for being dead weight with no ambition actually owned the penthouse apartment he was kicking her out of, the company car he drove, the office where he worked, and quite literally controlled every aspect of the professional life he was so proud of. Marcus thought he was divorcing a helpless housewife to marry Vanessa Torres, Apex's ambitious marketing director, a woman he believed was his equal in power and status. But Rebecca wasn't helpless, wasn't powerless, and wasn't even close to what he'd imagined. She was the ghost in the machine, the invisible hand that had shaped his entire career, the secret billionaire owner he'd unknowingly reported to for 6 years. And now that her husband had rejected her, rejected their unborn daughter, and kicked his pregnant wife out of her own home to marry his mistress, Rebecca Sinclair Reeves was about to stop hiding. She was about to show Marcus exactly what happened when you divorce and betray the woman who owned everything you thought you'd earned. But what would a secretly powerful pregnant wife do to the husband who'd thrown her out? How would Marcus react when the woman he'd called worthless revealed she was worth $31.5 billion? What happens when a man divorces the secret billionaire who could destroy his entire life with a single phone call? And how far would a mother protecting her unborn daughter go to crush the man who'd called their baby a mistake and left him homeless, broken, and begging for mercy he didn't deserve? Rebecca stood in the marble foyer wearing maternity pajamas, her hand instinctively cradling the swell of her belly where their daughter kicked and turned, unaware that her father was about to abandon them both. She'd been making coffee when Marcus emerged from the bedroom with 2 expensive suitcases, his face cold and determined, like he was heading to a business meeting instead of destroying a 9-year marriage. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Rebecca could see Vanessa Torres leaning against her silver Porsche in the street below, checking her phone and smiling like she'd already won some competition Rebecca hadn't known they were having. The morning light caught the diamond on Vanessa's finger, and Rebecca's stomach twisted because she recognized that ring. It had belonged to Marcus's grandmother, the one he'd promised would go to their daughter someday. "I'm leaving," Marcus announced without looking at her, his voice flat and businesslike. "Divorce papers will be served this afternoon. I need you out of this apartment by Friday. Vanessa and I are getting married next month, and we'll need the space." Rebecca felt her daughter kick hard against her ribs, as if the baby could sense the danger, could feel her mother's heart beginning to crack. "Marcus, what are you talking about? I'm 6 months pregnant with your child." He finally looked at her then, and the contempt in his eyes was so pure, so undiluted, that it took her breath away. "Get rid of it, Rebecca. I'm not playing father to your trap, baby. You think I don't know what you did? Getting pregnant to lock me down? I'm done. Vanessa and I will have our own family. Real children. Planned children. Not this mistake." The word hung in the air like poison. Mistake. He'd called their daughter, the baby girl who would have his eyes and his smile, a mistake. Rebecca's hand tightened protectively over her belly, and she felt something inside her shift and harden like steel cooling in cold water. "This is my apartment, Marcus. My income pays for everything here. You contribute nothing except your boring presence and your complete lack of ambition." He gestured around the penthouse dismissively. "You're a parasite, Rebecca. A boring, useless parasite who trapped me with a pregnancy. Look at you. No career, no prospects, no value. You're a failed investment, and I'm cutting my losses." He pulled out an envelope and tossed it onto the marble counter where it landed next to her prenatal vitamins. "There's the prenup. You'll get what it says, maybe 50,000 if you're lucky. Be grateful I'm not leaving you with nothing." Most men would. Rebecca picked up the envelope with trembling fingers, not because she was afraid, but because she was using every ounce of self-control not to tell him the truth right then and there. The prenup he was so confident about had been drafted by her family attorney, Patricia Chen, one of the most ruthless lawyers in New York. It contained clauses Marcus's cheaper lawyer hadn't fully understood. Protections built specifically for scenarios like infidelity and abandonment. But more than that, it contained liquidated damages provisions for emotional distress caused by affairs during pregnancy. Patricia had insisted on it, and Rebecca had agreed, never imagining she'd actually need it. "You've really thought this through," Rebecca said quietly, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. Marcus threw the last of his toiletries into his bag and zipped it with finality. "Vanessa's being promoted to VP of Strategic Marketing next week. Combined, we'll be making over $1.6 million a year. We're going to build an empire together, Rebecca. She understands ambition. She understands my world. You never did." He moved toward the door, and Rebecca followed, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. "I loved you," she said, and hated how small her voice sounded. "I supported every step of your career. I moved 4 times for your promotions. I gave up everything for you." Marcus laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was cruel and dismissive. "Supported me? You've been a passenger, Rebecca. Dead weight I've been carrying for 9 years. Vanessa's a partner. She's powerful, successful, everything you're not. She operates at my level. And honestly, she's still beautiful. She takes care of herself. You've let yourself go." His eyes dropped to her pregnant belly with disgust. "I deserve better than this." He opened the door, then paused and looked back at her one final time. "Don't contact me. Don't show up at my office. My lawyers will handle everything. And Rebecca, do us both a favor. Make better choices in your next relationship. Maybe get a job. Contribute something. Be more than just a boring housewife living off a trust fund." Then Marcus Reeves walked out of the penthouse apartment his wife actually owned, got into the company car his wife's corporation had assigned him, and drove away with the mistress who worked for his wife's company, completely unaware that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his entire life. The door clicked shut, and Rebecca stood alone in the silence, her hand on her belly, her daughter kicking steadily against her palm like a heartbeat, like a reminder of what she was fighting for now. She walked slowly to the window and watched Marcus load his bags into Vanessa's Porsche. She watched Vanessa kiss him dramatically, her hands possessive on his chest. She watched them drive away, laughing, probably already planning their future in the apartment they thought belonged to him, discussing the company they thought he'd conquered through his own brilliance. And Rebecca felt the grief wash over her in waves, not for losing Marcus, but for the death of who she'd believed he was, for the family she'd imagined, for the father her daughter would never have. Then she walked to her private study, the room Marcus thought was just a home office where she did yoga and online shopping, unlocked the hidden door behind the bookshelf, and stepped into her real workspace. 3 monitors displayed real-time data from Apex Global Industries. Her encrypted phone held direct lines to the CFO, the board chairman, and her attorney. The walls were covered with her grandfather's photos and the original incorporation documents from 1962, when William Sinclair had founded the empire with nothing but ambition and integrity. Rebecca sat in her leather chair, placed both hands on her belly where her daughter was still kicking, and made a decision. The test was over. Marcus had shown her exactly who he was when he thought she had no power. A man who would abandon his pregnant wife and call his unborn child a mistake didn't deserve mercy. He deserved truth, and truth, delivered with the full weight of $31.5 billion and a mother's protective fury, was going to destroy him completely. She picked up her encrypted phone and dialed. "Patricia, it's Rebecca. It's time. I need you to prep everything." "Yes, everything. I want him terminated, evicted, and served within 72 hours. And Patricia? Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Every executive, every VP, everyone who's ever worked with Marcus Reeves. It's time they met the real owner of Apex Global Industries. She hung up and made 2 more calls, one to James Morrison, her CFO, and one to David Park, head of corporate security. Then she sat back, closed her eyes, and whispered to her daughter, "I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm sorry your father is who he is. But I promise you this, he will never hurt us again, and he will never, ever call you a mistake without consequences." Outside, Manhattan glittered in the morning sun, unaware that in 72 hours, one of its most arrogant executives was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. Never underestimate a quiet woman, and never ever betray the woman carrying your child. Marcus Reeves celebrated his freedom at Cipriani that evening, ordering $300 bottles of wine like he was already the CEO he believed he'd become. Vanessa sat across from him in a red dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, her hand possessive on his arm, already planning their engagement party and talking about the brownstone in the West Village they'd buy once his divorce was finalized. "To us," she said, raising her glass, her eyes glittering with ambition and champagne. "To the power couple of Apex Global. You're going to be CEO within 3 years, Marcus. I can feel it. And with me running strategic marketing, we'll be unstoppable." Marcus smiled and believed every word because success had taught him that he deserved everything good that came his way. He'd worked hard, climbed the ladder through talent and determination, earned every promotion through brilliance and strategic thinking. Rebecca had been an anchor, dragging him down with her lack of ambition and her boring domesticity. But now he was free to soar with a woman who actually understood power. His phone buzzed with an email notification. "Urgent all-hands meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m., executive conference room, attendance mandatory." He frowned slightly but dismissed it as probably some restructuring announcement or new strategic initiative. Good. He wanted to be visible during important company moments, wanted the board to see his face and remember him when succession planning conversations began. What Marcus didn't know was that Rebecca had scheduled that meeting personally, that every executive in the building was about to learn the truth, and that his entire world was approximately 14 hours from complete annihilation. "I heard the CEO might be stepping down," Vanessa said, leaning closer, her perfume expensive and cloying. "This could be your moment, baby. Make sure you speak up tomorrow. Show them your leadership material." Marcus squeezed her hand and felt invincible. He'd shed the dead weight, upgraded to a woman who matched his ambition, and positioned himself perfectly for the next phase of his career. Life was finally giving him everything he deserved. Meanwhile, across the city in her private office, in a building Marcus didn't know she owned, Rebecca sat with Patricia Chen, reviewing every detail of tomorrow's strategy. The attorney was 58, sharp as broken glass, and had been protecting the Sinclair family interests for 30 years. "We have him on 14 separate instances of expense fraud," Patricia said, sliding documents across the desk. "Miami, Vegas, Aspen, all claimed as business conferences. Total misappropriation of company funds, $47,000 used to finance his affair. That's criminal, Rebecca. We can refer this to prosecutors." Rebecca's hand rested on her belly, where her daughter was finally sleeping after hours of restless movement. "Do it, but I want more than criminal charges, Patricia. I want him destroyed professionally. I want his reputation so damaged that no company in this industry will touch him." Patricia smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. "The prenup has teeth, Rebecca. Infidelity clause, abandonment during pregnancy clause, emotional distress damages. We're looking at $3.4 million in liquidated damages. And since he initiated the divorce, he gets nothing. Not the $50,000 he promised you, nothing." James Morrison, the CFO, arrived at 8 p.m. with additional ammunition. He was 52, brilliant with numbers, and had known Rebecca since she was a child visiting her grandfather's office. His signing bonus for the SVP promotion was $200,000, James said, pulling up contracts on his laptop. There's a clause requiring repayment if terminated for cause within the first year. Fraud qualifies. We can reclaim every penny. Rebecca nodded, her mind calculating with the same precision she used in board meetings. What about his stock options? Unvested and forfeit upon termination. He loses approximately $400,000 in future equity. The apartment? You own the building through Sinclair Property Holdings. He's not on the lease. Never was. You can evict with 24 hours notice since he's not a legal tenant. Rebecca felt her daughter kick, a strong, determined movement that felt like encouragement. The car. Company vehicle issued to senior VPs, repossessed immediately upon termination. David Park, head of security, was the last to arrive, carrying a folder thick with surveillance reports. I have photos of them together at company events. Timestamps showing when he left work early to meet her, security footage from the parking garage showing them leaving together multiple times. This establishes pattern and premeditation. Rebecca took the folder and felt nothing but cold clarity. Tomorrow morning, in front of 40 of the company's most powerful executives, she would stop being invisible. She would step into the light her grandfather had kept her hidden in, and she would show Marcus Reeves exactly what happened when you betrayed a Sinclair. I want him escorted out by security, she said quietly. I want his access cards deactivated before he even leaves the building. I want every professional connection in this industry to know what he did. Patricia looked at her carefully. Rebecca, are you sure? Once you go public as the owner, everything changes. Your privacy is gone. The press will be relentless. Rebecca's hand moved protectively over her belly. He called our daughter a mistake, Patricia. He told me to get rid of her. There's no coming back from that. I don't care about privacy anymore. I care about protecting my child. That night, Marcus slept peacefully in Vanessa's apartment, dreaming of corner offices and executive power. While Rebecca lay awake in the penthouse, he thought he'd abandoned her feeling her daughter move and turn, making plans that would dismantle his life piece by piece. She thought about the early years when Marcus had been kind, when he'd held her hand and called her his secret treasure, when success hadn't yet revealed the rot underneath his charm. She thought about her grandfather's test, about spending 9 years invisible to learn who people truly were without the influence of her wealth. And she thought about the man who'd walked out that morning, rejecting their child, abandoning his family, choosing ambition and a mistress over the woman who'd actually given him everything he thought he'd earned. The grief came in waves, but underneath it was something harder and colder. Protective fury. Her daughter deserved better than a father who called her a mistake. And Rebecca deserved better than a husband who saw her as worthless. Tomorrow, the world would shift. Tomorrow, Marcus would learn the truth. And tomorrow, a mother protecting her unborn child would show him that quiet women aren't weak. They're just choosing their moment. At 6 a.m., Rebecca dressed carefully in a charcoal Tom Ford maternity suit that cost $4,200. Had her hair styled by a professional who came to the penthouse, applied makeup with the precision of war paint, and put on the diamond earrings her grandfather had given her when she inherited the company. She looked in the mirror and saw not the boring housewife Marcus had discarded, but the billionaire CEO she'd always been underneath. Her daughter kicked hard and Rebecca smiled. Today, baby girl, she whispered, her hand on her belly. Today, Mama shows the world who we really are. And your father learns the most expensive lesson of his life. She picked up her phone and sent one final text to Patricia Chen. I'm ready. Let's begin. Then Rebecca Sinclair Reeves, secret owner of a $47 billion empire, pregnant and powerful and done hiding, walked out of her penthouse to destroy the man who'd thrown her away. And she felt no guilt at all. The executive conference room at Apex Global Industries was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a mahogany table that cost more than most cars, leather chairs reserved for the powerful. Marcus arrived early at 8:45, wanting to project eagerness and ambition. his tie perfectly knotted, his confidence bulletproof. Vanessa had texted him good luck and added that she'd heard rumors the CEO might be stepping down, that this could be his moment to shine. The room filled gradually with senior vice presidents from every division. The CFO, general counsel, board members Marcus recognized from company materials, people whose approval he'd spent 6 years chasing. The energy felt strange, anticipatory but tense, like everyone knew something he didn't. He smiled confidently, nodding at colleagues, pretending he belonged in rooms like this permanently, never suspecting that in 7 minutes his entire existence would detonate. At 9 a.m. exactly. The door opened and Rebecca walked in, but not the Rebecca he knew, not the pregnant housewife in maternity pajamas he'd thrown out yesterday morning. This Rebecca wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit, tailored perfectly around her 6-month belly, her hair styled with precision, diamond earrings catching the light, carrying herself with an authority that made the air crackle with electricity. Marcus felt his heart stop, confusion flooding through him like ice water. What was Rebecca doing here? Had she somehow gotten a job at Apex? Was this some embarrassing coincidence? But then she took the seat at the head of the table, the CEO's chair, and the room fell into absolute silence. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Rebecca began, her voice clear and commanding. Nothing like the quiet woman he'd dismissed as boring. "I know many of you have questions, so let me address them directly. My name is Rebecca Sinclair Reeves, though most of you know me as R. Sinclair from Board Communications, or simply as the anonymous majority shareholder referenced in company documentation." Marcus couldn't breathe. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles went white. No, this wasn't possible. This was insane. "For 7 years," Rebecca continued, her eyes sweeping the room but carefully avoiding Marcus, "I've managed this company remotely, attending board meetings via secure video, making strategic decisions through proxies, maintaining my privacy as was my grandfather's wish. William Sinclair founded Apex Global in 1962, and when he passed, he left me controlling interest. 67% of all shares, valued currently at approximately $31.5 billion. The room erupted in whispers. Some executives looked shocked. Others nodded like pieces were clicking into place. Vanessa's boss, the CMO, had gone pale, suddenly understanding how completely he'd failed to know his own company's ownership structure. Marcus felt like he was drowning, like reality had twisted into something unrecognizable. However, Rebecca's voice hardened like steel. "Recent events have made it clear that anonymity has allowed certain behaviors to flourish that I can no longer tolerate. It's time for transparency and accountability." Her eyes finally found Marcus, and the look she gave him was surgical, precise, designed to cut. "Marcus Reeves, Senior Vice President of Operations. I've reviewed your expense reports very carefully, and I've found some deeply concerning patterns. Tell me, do you remember the business conference in Miami 3 weeks ago? The one that cost this company $15,000 in hotel and travel expenses?" Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat had closed completely. "Because according to the private investigator I hired," Rebecca continued, pulling out a folder, "you weren't at a conference. You were at the Fontainebleau with Vanessa Torres, using company funds to finance an extramarital affair with a subordinate. That's fraud, Marcus. That's corporate theft, and it's grounds for immediate termination and criminal prosecution." Vanessa made a choking sound 3 chairs away. The CMO had his head in his hands. The general counsel was already taking notes. "But let's discuss something even more interesting," Rebecca said, her voice dropping to something deadly quiet. "The penthouse apartment you kicked your pregnant wife out of yesterday morning. I own that building, Marcus. I purchased it through Sinclair Property Holdings 4 years ago. The rent you thought you were paying was actually going into a managed account I set up to maintain your illusion of independence. You were never on the lease. You never paid a single dollar toward our home. You just thought you did." Marcus tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. "Rebecca, please, we can talk about this privately. We're married, We're divorced, Marcus," She cut him off, her voice flat and final. "Or we will be once my attorneys finish processing the papers you served me yesterday while I was 6 months pregnant with your daughter. The daughter you called a mistake. The child you told me to get rid of. Remember that conversation? Because I do. I remember every word." The room had gone completely silent. 40 executives watching a man's life disintegrate in real time. Effective immediately, you're terminated from Apex Global Industries for expense fraud, ethics violations, and gross misconduct. Security will escort you from the building. Your final paycheck will reflect deductions for the $47,000 in fraudulent expenses. The signing bonus you received for the SVP promotion, $200,000, is forfeit per the terms you clearly didn't read. Human Resources will pursue full recovery. Marcus was shaking, his face gray, sweat beading on his forehead. Additionally, Rebecca continued relentless, the penthouse lease is terminated today. You have 24 hours to remove your personal belongings before I change the locks. The Mercedes you've been driving, company car issued to senior VPs. You'll surrender it to security, along with your access cards and laptop immediately. She turned to Vanessa, who was crying silently, mascara running down her face. "Miss Torres, you're also terminated effective immediately for your role in the expense fraud and for demonstrating catastrophic lack of judgment in conducting an affair with a married superior. You'll also surrender your company car and any unvested equity compensation." Rebecca stood, 6 months pregnant and radiating power that made everyone in the room understand they were watching history. "Let me be absolutely clear about something," she said, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "I gave this man every opportunity to value me for who I was, not what I had. I stayed invisible for 9 years to see who would love me without agenda, who would treat me with respect when they thought I had no power. Marcus failed that test spectacularly. He abandoned his pregnant wife, rejected his unborn daughter, and called her a mistake while standing in an apartment I owned, driving a car my company gave him, enjoying a career I facilitated." Her voice cracked just slightly, the only sign of the pain underneath. "My grandfather taught me that hidden power reveals truth. And the truth is, Marcus, you're exactly who you showed me yesterday morning. A man who values power over people, success over family, ambition over integrity. I'm just grateful I learned who you really were before our daughter was born, before she could be hurt by your cruelty." Marcus finally found his voice, desperate and broken. "Rebecca, I made mistakes. I'm sorry. Please, we can fix this. I love you. You don't love me," she said quietly. "You never did. You loved what you thought I represented, safety, comfort, someone to manage your home while you chased glory. But you never actually saw me, Marcus. You never wondered why I was content without a visible career. You never questioned how I filled my days. You just assumed I was less than you and treated me accordingly." She nodded to David Park, who was standing by the door with 2 security guards. "Escort Mr. Reeves and Miss Torres from the building. Make sure they surrender all company property. And activate the industry blacklist protocol. Make sure every CFO in our network knows exactly why they were terminated." As security approached, Marcus looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, finding only disgust and shock on the faces of colleagues who'd watched him preen and boast and belittle his wife at company functions. Vanessa was already being led out sobbing, her carefully constructed future crumbling around her. "One more thing, Marcus," Rebecca said, as security took his arm. "The prenup you were so confident about? It has an infidelity clause, an abandonment clause, and liquidated damages provisions for emotional distress during pregnancy. My attorneys estimate your total liability at $3.4 million. We'll be pursuing that through civil court after the company finishes its criminal referral for the expense fraud." Marcus's legs gave out. Security had to hold him up. "You destroyed me," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You had everything, and you destroyed me." Rebecca's hand moved protectively over her belly, where their daughter was kicking, strong and alive and precious. "No, Marcus, you destroyed yourself. I just stopped hiding who I was. There's a difference. She watched security escort him out, watched him stumble and nearly fall, watched the man she'd loved for 9 years become a cautionary tale about arrogance and betrayal. And she felt grief, yes, but underneath it was something stronger, relief. Her daughter would never know a father who called her a mistake, would never grow up watching her mother be dismissed and demeaned, would never learn that love meant accepting cruelty. 3 months later, Rebecca gave birth to Lily Sinclair Reeves in a private suite at Mount Sinai, surrounded by Patricia Chen, Sophie Kim, her Aunt Caroline, and the best medical team money could buy. Marcus sent flowers to the hospital. She returned them unopened. He sent letters claiming he'd made mistakes, that he wanted to be part of his daughter's life. Patricia sent restraining orders in response. He tried showing up at the building. Security removed him before he reached the lobby. Eventually, he stopped trying. Vanessa had dumped him via text 6 hours after the termination, blocking his number and pretending she'd never known him. His mother called him a fool. His father stopped answering his calls. The industry blacklist meant no company would hire him for positions matching his experience. He ended up couch surfing with former colleagues who pitied him, burning through his savings, eventually landing in a shelter when the civil judgment came through and his accounts were frozen. Rebecca went public as CEO when Lily was 3 months old, appearing on the cover of Forbes, holding her daughter with the headline, "The Secret Billionaire Who Built an Empire in the Shadows." She launched a maternal health initiative in her grandfather's name, funding research and support for women abandoned during pregnancy. She became the face of the company her grandfather founded, no longer hiding, no longer invisible. And every time she looked at Lily, she felt grateful. Grateful Marcus had shown his true nature before it was too late. Grateful her daughter would grow up watching her mother be powerful and kind and unafraid. Grateful that quiet strength had won over loud arrogance. Marcus Reeves had thought he was divorcing a helpless housewife. Instead, he'd betrayed a billionaire who owned everything he'd valued and lost absolutely everything in return. The punishment fit the crime perfectly. And somewhere in Manhattan, Rebecca Sinclair held her daughter close and whispered the lesson her grandfather had taught her. Never mistake quiet for weak, baby girl. And never, ever underestimate a woman who knows her worth. If this story touched your heart, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from right now. And if you believe that quiet strength is more powerful than loud arrogance, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that reminds you of your own worth. Because everyone deserves to know they're more than someone else's opinion of them.